Our research shows that you've got a divergence in what's happening in the macro environment. So you've got a situation where you've got growing U.S. economy while the rest of the world is slowing down, particularly markets like Japan and in the emerging markets. I guess the key question is, can the American markets continue on their growth path, or will they succumb to the sort of slowdown that the rest of the world has seen? I would say that there are various factors to consider. So things like these trade wars that have been initiated by the states of China, how that impacts on the rest of the world. Do they sort of withstand those outside influences, or do they benefit from these outside influences? You know, in theory, markets could actually even improve and pick up from those macro trends. Obviously, Brexit still weighs quite heavily on this particular environment, and then the rest of the world, they're facing challenges for things like tightening credit squeeze or tightening credit spreads, if you like, or lack of credit liquidity. And then by not getting that credit, they obviously can't get access to funds to grow and stimulate their own economies, which kind of then bolsters back out again. So yeah, I would say in a nutshell, that's pretty much what's going on at the moment. Two different worlds. I think technology is one. I'll sort of summarize it like this. I think technology, element of talent, there's funding in terms of where we're getting our assets from in terms of our allocators, and also in terms of lack of alpha, if you like, in some of these markets, and so basically the allocations are going somewhere else. But if we come back to the technology, I think that basically the world is going through a massive change at the moment in terms of its deliverabilities in the technology, and so you're finding huge asset allocators and asset managers having to spend more time and effort on getting their technology platforms right. It's something that allocators have been talking about for a long time, but with the advent of things like blockchain and faster computing power, people and even regulation, things like GDPR, people are now forced to think about how they can streamline their business and scale their business in such a way that they can benefit from the lower costs, if you like, that this industry is also experiencing. That's the fourth thing. So you've got a situation where businesses are now forced to look inward and to say, okay, we need to simplify our processes, we need to make our, and I'm not talking so much about the front office stuff, I'm talking a bit more about middle office risk and back office stuff, so where the guys need to say, okay, we need to step up to the plate and get and deliver, if you like, these fast turnarounds. So to give you an example, in the hedge fund world, we still do shadow bookkeeping, we reconcile to administrators, we outsource to administrators. We have to have people in place to oversee and put in oversight of those administrators and those custodians. We've now got depositories that we do reconciliation with as well. And so what we need is faster systems in the back to make those processes much quicker, because the longer they take to do, the more people involved, the more manual the process, the more cost to business. And essentially what happens over time is, because you're getting low fees, low income coming in terms of a smaller shrinking asset pool, you've also got higher costs going up to run your business. And at some point these two cross out and you leave. So what's happening is you've got very large players, I'd say center, you've got allocators allocating to those very large players, and then you've got small differentiators on the edges that are now trying to compete and to try and create more alpha than what these big guys can give, and therefore attract the funds coming in. And the way they're doing that is they're simplifying their business structures. So that's one area of hedge fund world that's changed in terms of technology. I mentioned the things about allocators and how that allocation space has changed. So we've seen in the last 7 years, I'd say we've seen a shift away from large fund houses with big research teams to smaller shops or outfits, and at the same time big consultants pushing down fees and doing the research. And I think we may be in a cycle change now where that's coming back to building up research teams, but just a bit more bespoke, looking at more bespoke strategies, if you like, in smaller teams, niche teams, if you like, concentrating on those areas. And then obviously talent. I mentioned talent earlier on. Obviously, when you come through a cycle that we did pre-2008, you're having fairly big returns, you're able to pay big salaries, and so you're able to draw a fair amount of talent. Now we've got a slightly reverse situation. We don't get as big salaries, we're not able to draw talent in, and also I think the younger generation's kind of fallen out of love, if you like, with whole asset management, and they're kind of looking at other areas to operate in and competing assets in a way. So you've got cryptos on the side, and you've got blockchain, and you've got engineering, and you've got medicine, developments in bio, and so these industries are actually competing for the talent, I think. Yeah, so, look, it just depends on which type of businesses we're talking about. But obviously, if you've got your big quant funds, they are very, very much on top of technology and constantly pushing the edge, and massive development teams. So, if you look at those businesses, I would say if they've got 100 people employed, there's about 80 of them are just doing development, just software programmers building algos. And so I'd say, to come back to the point that I made just earlier, on the front office side, I think hedge funds have done a very good job of implementing technology. It's the middle office, the risk side, and the back office side that they need to step up to the plate. And so what you're finding is you've still got issues around one-day lags in terms of getting NAVs out. You're going to wait a whole day, cycle through a whole day settlement to get your real-time portfolio P&L. And so hopefully, if the sort of as it's described in the media, if these things come to fruition, but if, for instance, you do get a situation where you've got blockchain type settlements and blockchain type response times in terms of a trade, in theory, then if you aggregated that all up into, all those trades into one, you would get a pretty fast and robust settlement process happening in the background as well. So, you might find prime brokers introduce faster settlement through blockchain, you might find custodians do it, you might find administrators do it, and then it's a case of being very, very clever and tying that all together and saying, okay, we can deliver this. So at the moment, I think they're looking at it. I don't think many players have actually done a significant amount of work and actually made real progress with it. Some have, but in very small bites, if you like. But administrators for years have been working on improving their systems. It's a constant drive for them, same as the custodians, same with the prime brokers. And I think hedge funds for a few years have not invested in that space, and are now starting to look at that space in a different light. I've been around GAIM for a few years now, and so typically I miss a few years, and then I come back, and then I miss a few years, and when I say a few, I mean 2 or 3 years, and then I come back, because it's a very good forum for things like trends, and to understand what people are talking about, and it's sort of a cliche, but the sort of buzzwords of the industry, and you hear that a lot, and then you come here and basically some good minds sitting around the table discussing points and coming to some ideas and some sort of direction, and it's often come out of, I remember over the years out of GAIM Ops we've had, cyber security issues raised. I've been around GAIM Ops when we first raised issues around directors and corporate governance, right? So we had these directors raising 200-300 boards, and then all of a sudden, this is a no-no, coming to events like this and guys really drilling them on those sort of questions. We've had, so I would say out of this event, other things stem. So you get better corporate governance, you get better administrator and custodian oversight, you get a more discussion around strategies, moving away from concentrating on things like sort of long, short equity funds, and shorting, specifically rules around shorting. So all these topics are typically discussed at these type of events.